Yeah,
I'll be your sous chef.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's regular meeting of the Woburn City Council of February 6, 2024. Just a reminder to everyone tonight, please silence your cell phone. This meeting is being recorded for broadcast as well. If you are able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Clerk Higgins, if you will call a roll, please.
Counsel Campbell.
Present.
Counsel Demers.
Present.
Counsel DeMambro.
Present.
Counsel Ferrullo is absent. Counsel Mercer Bruin.
Here.
Counsel Papalato.
Present.
Counsel Toro.
Present.
Counsel Viola.
Present.
President Dillon.
Present.
Mr. President,
Yes.
may I make just a note for the record?
Yes, please do.
The city clerk's office will be closed on Thursday, February 15th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. for a training. So if any city council filings for the February 20th meeting should be received by 4:30 p.m. on Wednesday, February 14th. This is also due to the Monday holiday on the 19th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I'll make a motion to dispense with the reading of the previous meeting's journal and to approve. Second.
There's a second on the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
That passes. Thank you.
First item on the agenda is a communication dated January 24th, 2024, received from His Honor, the Mayor Michael P. Concanon, related to Carol Rigo and CDM Smith to do an update on the PFAS.
Make a motion the communication be received and made part of the permanent record.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
I'll make a motion that we suspend the rules to allow His Honor Michael Concanon and his designees to speak.
Motion and a second. Passes. Thank you. Yes, how are you tonight, Mayor Concanon?
I'm doing well, Mr. President. Thank you. To you and members of the council, thank you for your time. Thank you for suspending the rules as well to allow us to speak. This is the regular update on the PFAS situation here in Woburn. The quarterly update for this past fourth quarter of 2023. As you mentioned, I have with me the team. You know Carol Rigo from CDM Smith. I have Jay Corey, the engineer, Jay Duran, the DPW superintendent, and Tony Blazejowski, the water superintendent. They'll be available for any questions after the presentation. I will be turning it over to Carol. She has a slideshow which she'll also share with you, and we'll put on the website for everybody in the city to be brought up to speed. The main point of tonight's meeting is to let you know that for the fourth quarter of 2023, the average sampling revealed 21 parts per trillion for PFAS. As you know, the acceptable standard is 20 parts per trillion, so we're making that public. We'll be sharing that by way of a mailing that will go to all the residents of Woburn. It'll probably go out later this week, Friday or Saturday. It'll start to hit the mailboxes, so you may get some calls. As I said, we'll be sharing it on the website. Obviously, it'll be part of this tonight's meeting, and we'll field any calls, any questions that may come in. If you have any, by all means, feel free to ping me in my office or reach out to the water department for more specific answers to any questions you might have. As I say, the standard is 20. We were 21 for the fourth quarter, but the good news is that on average, we are still about 17.9 parts per trillion since we began testing in 2019. And then most recently, for January, the month just concluded, we were 13.5 parts per trillion. So the message is that we have this under control. We're monitoring it closely. I'm sure you're all aware of the measures that the city has been taking and will continue to take. And most importantly, we are on track in the design and potentially, or eventually the bidding and the construction of the new treatment plant, the component for PFAS down at Horn Pond. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Carol and the members of our team for the presentation. And then if there's any questions at all you have of me or the team, by all means, we're here to answer those. So thank you very much.
Thank
Carol?
you, Mayor Concanon. How are you tonight, Cal?
Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Okay. Let's see if we can get this thing to recognize me. I like that. Okay.
Hey there.
I think, it's on my screen. Pretty pictures. All right, let me close it and open it again and see if I can get it to. There we go. Okay. All right. So, as the mayor mentioned, this is the regular update. Let you know where things are at. Our agenda for tonight, the same items as we usually cover. We'll just go through what's changed along the way. So in terms of the levels that have been monitored, the city monitors monthly, and then the monitoring is averaged on a quarterly basis. So this is the historical data that we look at each time. Goes back to 2019, and the fourth quarter results are shaded with a little bit of blue there. And you can see they were a little elevated at the beginning of the fourth quarter, but the average for the fourth quarter, as the mayor mentioned, was just for those samples in October, November, and December, the average was 21 parts per trillion. And then the January results was 13.5. That's the last little bar on the end. And then, as the mayor mentioned, the average, the long-term average is just under 18. So in terms of compliance, it's determined on a quarterly basis. So we sample monthly, but calculate the compliance quarterly. And the 21 you can see here is just 1 part per trillion over the Mass DEP standard. And so as a result of that, the city will be issuing the public notification, which is sent to every postal patron. And as the mayor mentioned, it'll go out it'll hit the post office at the end of this week, and it'll start to be delivered possibly Saturday and then into the beginning of the following week. It looks like this. It's a trifold mailer. You probably have all gotten it before. And it has the updated information with all the new numbers, and the front page has the status of all the activities that the city's been doing, including what I'm going to go over tonight. So one other thing that is important to know, we talked about this before, probably around last June, but this is getting closer. So Massachusetts has had a standard for PFAS, a regulation for PFAS for almost 3 years now. But the federal government is in the process of doing their own standard. They don't actually have a standard yet. And so they proposed a standard last March. And we talked about that in one of the meetings. But now we're getting really close to them finalizing that. So we're expecting any day now, literally any day now, for that to become final. And we don't know the exact numbers, but the proposal was, they proposed to regulate 2 of the 6 PFAS compounds that the Mass DEP regulates. And then they also proposed a different kind of a regulation called a hazard index for 4 additional compounds, 2 of those of which Mass DEP also regulates. So it's not going to be exactly apples and apples with the Mass DEP. And Mass DEP will need to adopt the federal regulations or be more stringent. So we don't know how Mass DEP will do this, but they're going to have to find a way to merge what they've got on the books and what EPA is coming up with. So in terms of Horn Pond and the impact of that, the Horn Pond average for the two compounds that our EPA is proposing to be regulated, PFOA, PFOA, and PFOS, PFOS, EPA is proposing a limit of 4 parts per trillion. And the Horn Pond average is 7 and 8 parts per trillion, long-term average. So regardless of what we're doing for the DEP, we would still, under the EPA regulations, we would need to treat the water. And the new treatment will be able to achieve these limits. There's also this hazard index, which is a, it's not parts per trillion, it's a unit, it's like a calculation, it's a unitless measurement. And the EPA is proposing a level of 1, and the Horn Pond average long-term is 0. We've never calculated that particular parameter. And what that is that hazard index is aimed at some of the newer compounds that have come into the market versus PFOA and PFOS. Those are the old legacy compounds that a lot of which have been discontinued in use. So they're still present in the environment, but they're discontinued in terms of manufacturing and in applications. So just to beware, you may see some headlines very soon in the paper and on the news about, all of a sudden EPA is going to have a standard for PFAS, and that's essentially what this is all about. Okay, so just a quick update on the activities that the city's doing. I'm not going to go over the ones that we've already talked about, but the key ones are on the bottom row. The final design was completed and submitted to the DEP this past September. We received their comments in December and issued responses to the comments in January. And then the funding was we made the priority list in April of 2023, and the actual loan paperwork is already starting to come through from the state to the city, and working on filling all that information out. And then the other big thing was the project, because of the value of the project, it's over $10 million. It requires that the city pre-qualify contractors, general contractors and subcontractors for the trades. And that process has just been completed. We have a really good list of general contractors and subcontractors, and we'll be notifying them. And I'll go through the bidding timing on when I get to the last slide. So as far as the treatment goes, you've seen all of this before. The blue oval is where the new PFAS treatment will go. That's a view of the building. The interior of the building that shows the circles are the PFAS treatment vessels. They're big, tall vessels filled with granular carbon. There's 6 of them, and they operate in pairs. And the idea is that the carbon inside each pair would be changed out on a rotating basis, so that the water is always meets the standard. And that's just a couple of views of the architectural design. It basically is the exact architecture to match the building that's there now. And so a lot of administrative things happening. We received the order of conditions in October. Obviously, you guys know that we had the special permit in October. We submitted the building permit application in December. We received the loan approval on December 6th. And the technical review is what I mentioned earlier from DEP, and that's just about complete. We should be getting a final approval based on the responses that were submitted at the end of January. And so going forward, that's the first item I mentioned, we'll be getting the DEP final approval. We expect to start the bidding process at the end of February until around May. It's we have to advertise for bids and then allow for the sub-bids to come in first, and then distribute that information, review and distribute that information, and then the general contractors take that information and will then prepare their bids. And the deadline based on the funding is the contract, the construction contract has to be awarded by June 30th. And then the construction itself would start whenever that signing date is, as the date of the notice to proceed, until around January of 2026. And the startup would be the first quarter of 2026. So that's a really quick overview, and I don't know if you guys have any questions, or? It was very clear, there's no questions.
I just have one question. Carol, I know that we talked about this before, but I just want to confirm for some constituents. So the EPA expected standards, this new system that we're putting in,
Yes,
this should help with any of these pollutants that they're putting on the list.
yeah.
So we're not going to have to go back and try to upgrade and everything as soon as we
Everything
finish
that we see on,
building this.
everything we see on the horizon.
Okay.
I mean, if some new technology comes along or to detect things that none of us know about, then, you know, obviously we can't totally predict something like that. But anything that we see, like the compounds that are listed, and even the ones that are in that hazard index, the city's levels have been 0, and we've been monitoring for, you know, over 3 years, almost 4 years now, so.
Okay, great, thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, Lou?
I just have one question, Carol. Have we ever put together a link between, rainfall? I noticed towards the tail end of the year, we had a lot of rainfall, and it seemed like there was a spike. Is there any correlation between heavy rainfall and the PFAS increase?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, a couple years ago, we thought we were onto something. We sort of had a pattern going, and it looked like there was some correlation with rain. And then we got was it 2 years ago, we had like the ridiculous rain, or no, last year we had the ridiculous rain and the levels were low. And then the year before, we had like a drought and the levels were high. You know what I mean? It just did just totally defied all the logic. And the levels have been, I mean, if you look at that graph, I mean, yeah, they go up and down, but it's a very narrow band. You know, we're talking a difference of like from maybe about 12 or 13 parts per trillion on the low end to like 23-ish on the high end. Like that's the range. And when you consider that a part per trillion is 1 drop in 20 Olympic swimming pools, I mean, you're really at like the limits of detection. Though I should also mention the new EPA standards, the 4 that they're proposing for those 2 compounds, that is essentially the level that can be quantified. So they had to set the level at 4 because you can't quantify anything below that, so.
Excellent, thank you.
Yes.
Speaking of that standard, that was, the new standard's gonna be 4, and we're 7.1 and 8.1. Is that something we should be concerned about, that we're over those standards at this point?
No, because the treatment that we're working toward implementing will be removing that. The Mass DEP standard has been in place, is 20 parts per trillion, but it's the sum of 6 of the compounds, 2 of which are those 2 that EPA is gonna be regulating. So it's just a little bit different, like it's like a little bit of apples and oranges. There's some tangerines in the middle that are common, they overlap, right? But EPA's got their thing and DEP's got their thing, and there's a little bit of overlap, so.
Okay, so you're not concerned about that?
No, because those 2 compounds are in the 20 part per trillion number that the Mass DEP is currently, that we're already regulating, so.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Anyone else? Everyone's good? Okay.
Great.
Thank you,
Okay,
Carol.
thank you.
as
Thank you.
always.
Make a motion to return to the regular order of business?
Second.
The motion and the second, all in favor?
Aye.
Make a motion the matter be placed on file.
Second.
Motion and a second that this be placed on file, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes.
Next item on the agenda is an order to transfer the sum of $69,709,000 from Traffic Safety and Infrastructure Fund account to Salem and Bow pedestrian safety accounts.
Make a motion the matter be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Next item on the agenda under new petitions, the petitions for renewal of second-class motor vehicle sales license by the following: Cambridge Road Auto Sales DBA Woburn Plaza Shell, 293 Cambridge Road.
Make a motion the matter be referred to the Committee on Public Safety and License.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Next item on the agenda is a petition by Gravana DBA Tandoor and Curry request for minor modification to special permit dated March 6, 2018 from Crispy Crunchy Chicken to change the petitioner to Grabani DBA Tandoor and Curry at 902 Main Street. A communication dated January 30th, 2024 was received from Attorney Tabi related to this petition.
Make a motion we receive the communication, make it part of the permanent record.
Second.
All in favor? Pass. Attorney Tabi?
Thank you. I represent Grabani Jasmine LLC in connection with this request for a minor modification of the special permit that was originally issued to Mr. Patel doing business as Crispy Crunchy Chicken at 902 Main Street. With the request, we provided a copy of the original special permit decision, menus of both Crispy Crunchy Chicken and Tandoor and Curry. So looking at section 11.12 of the ordinance entitled Modification of Special Permits, defines a minor modification as one which will result in insignificant changes to the project. And then it goes through and gives a number of examples, minor adjustments in location of buildings, adjustments to parking, landscaping, site details that don't affect the overall build-out of the site, reductions of less than 5% on landscaping, minor adjustments that don't affect the number of housing units. There's no housing units. The next one deals with housing units. Number 6, minor adjustments to building floor plans that do not increase the number of required parking spaces, and minor adjustments to approved facade plans, building elevations, and the last one, minor adjustments to underground utility infrastructure. So the replacement of Mr. Patel with Gurbani is a minor modification. They'll continue to operate a fast food restaurant at 902 Main Street with a similar small menu. The interior of the premises will remain the same. The hours of operation will actually be cut back a little bit. The hours of operation would be 11 a.m. to 8 p.m., Monday through Sunday. The current restaurant is open from 10 a.m. to 11 p.m., Monday through Saturday, and 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. on Sunday. This request is similar to the request that we made to the council when it approved Flip the Bird that replaced Woo Burger and Pokey Hut that replaced Firehouse Subs. So I would respectfully request that the council approve this as a minor modification.
Any questions for Attorney Tabi? Yes, Councilor DeMambro.
Hi, Joe.
Good evening.
Good evening. So, as we did our site visit, and you and I communicated with the owners, the current owners, I did have a few conditions that I would like to put in place before the approval of this petition. If it's okay, I'd like to go through them.
Sure.
We had spoke earlier on them, so they're no surprise to you. The first order of condition I would like to make is I would like to keep the front and the side of that building at the 904 Main Street, all the way back to the back fence and the dumpster area, clean, neat, and orderly, and perpetuity to that restaurant. My second condition would be no on-street parking longer than the posted 30-minute street parking signs that are already in place. If they can minimize that to 15 minutes, even better, because it is tight down there and there's very little to minimal parking. My third condition will be the dumpster must be properly maintained and locked at all times and emptied regularly. No trash will exceed the water level height of that dumpster. I want those lids to be affixed to the frame. I don't want to see bags and everything and the lids sky high. Number 4 would be the dumpster, when it needs to be emptied, must not block the sidewalk, and it must be rolled back as soon as it is emptied, because I do know those dumpsters down there are on wheels, and it all depends on the carting service. I understand that their hours are 11 to 8 o'clock. The carting service might be able to get in there with a truck, if it's a front feeder, and take care of that. I'm not sure, but if they should have to move it out, I would appreciate it if they didn't keep it on the sidewalk or on the street for a decent amount of time. My fifth one is, and we had discussed this with the owners, I would request that parking signs be posted on the right side of the building stating parking for Tandor and Curry customers only. All others will be towed at owner's expense. Again, parking is tight down there. There's a lot of restaurants, there's a lot of patrons going to these different eateries down there. And if they can utilize that parking on the side of the building for their establishment, I would greatly appreciate that. My number 6 would be absolutely no double parking on Main Street, Amanote Street, for any food pickup services or customers. I would like that posted on the front door before they enter the establishment. I would request that the restaurant staff will be required to be enforcing this double parking order to keep their patrons safe. And I would request that they tell their patrons to move those cars immediately if they should see so, before they even do any business or exchange of food. And lastly, the Woburn Police Department will be informed to ticket and tow as they see fit if these parking requests are not followed. So, as long and providing that, you're okay with all of these conditions, I would like to move on this petition tonight, and I would ask my councils to support this.
President Dillon,
Yes,
on that last, may I just speak on that last condition real quick?
please.
The enforcement of special permits is actually usually the building commissioner, not the police department. I understand if they break a law. Do you have that written in writing? Do you have your conditions written in writing?
Yes.
May I see them?
Sure.
The police department can only, sorry, I just wanted to read it. The police department can only ticket what is, offense in the traffic code or something in law.
If it's a no parking situation.
No parking,
Or
yes.
double parked.
Correct. But you made some other parking concerns. I didn't know if that applies to that.
I didn't know. It's just a real tight area down there, and being that the traffic light's right there and everything else, and I know it's fast food and people, especially with Uber Eats and things of that nature, I just don't want it to be one of these deals where they throw their hazard lights on, run in real quick, and because it'll just tangle up that whole thing. That's why it's imperative that there is no,
Okay, so the intent of that, I didn't understand the intent of that condition is to have them just enforce what's legally enforceable?
yes.
Thank you. That's all I wanted to know.
Oh, legally enforceable. of
Yeah,
course,
sorry, that's
yes.
what I was trying to get at.
Yes,
Thank you.
no, absolutely.
Thank you, Clerk Higgins.
Thank you.
That's fine.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
Regarding this minor modification?
Make a motion that the minor modification be granted with the conditions as outlined by Councilor DeMambro.
7
Second.
conditions.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
That
Hey,
passes.
thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Tarby.
Good luck, gentlemen.
Next item on the agenda under public hearings is N-Star Electric Company DBA Eversource Energy for grant of location to install one new joint pole 591/25A, approximately 110 feet south of pole 591/26 on Commerce Way. A communication dated February 5th, 2024 was received from Jackie Duffy, the right-of-way agent, requesting this to be continued.
Make a motion that communication be received, made part of the permanent record.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second to open the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
That passes. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on this matter? Please approach the podium.
Mr. President, I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing until the regular meeting of the council on February 20th, 2024.
Second.
A motion and a second to continue. All in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Next item on the agenda under public hearings is a petition by Fairfield Woburn Limited Partnership for a new inflammable license for 7,056 gallons of Class 1A gasoline fuel stored in vehicle tanks at 316 New Boston Street. Okay, there's no further new communications.
How are you again, Attorney Tabby?
Yes, for the record, Joseph Tabby, Woburn and Redmond, 500 Unicorn Park Drive in Woburn. I'd like to submit the notices, public notice, all the green cards for both Woburn and Wilmington.
Make a motion that we receive the papers and make them part of the permanent record.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Okay, here you go. So this application is similar to the applications we presented a couple of months ago for LCS at the Vale and Pulte at the Vale. It's an application for a flammable license. In this particular case, Fairfield will be providing parking for 441 vehicles in the parking garage, and a flammable license is required under Chapter 148, Section 13. And the regulations require us to provide plans to the fire department. They review, the Woburn Fire Department safety officials review the plans and the application, and then it's endorsed by Chief Kenton. That was done. We've submitted that for the record, and I would ask the council to move on this application.
Questions for Attorney Tabby?
Make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to open the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
That passes. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on this matter?
Mr. President, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing and grant the new inflammable license.
Second.
There is a motion to close the public hearing and a second, and to grant the petition. All in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Next item on the agenda is petition by Sun Tree Estates LLC for a special permit under section 5.1, subsection 12 and 15.6 C6 of the Woburn zoning ordinance to allow for a child care center at 205 and 213 Cambridge Road. A communication dated January 4th, 2024 was received from Tina Cassidy, the planning director. A communication dated, just give me one moment, please. Communication dated January 17th, 2024 was received from Ellen Callahan, the city solicitor. And I believe those are the communications I have received.
Make a motion that we receive those communications and make them part of the permanent record.
Second.
Motion and a second for all the communications. All in favor?
Aye.
That passes. How are you, Attorney Bobowski?
Very well, Mr. President. How are you?
I'm good. You had a good vacation, I hope.
Oh, penguins galore.
There you go. Back to work.
Thank you. Mark Bobrowski, for the record. My office is in Concord. We're prepared to give you a very brief update on what has transpired since the first of the year, basically. I'm going to introduce Bert Corey, who will do that, and then I'll take the microphone back.
Thank you.
If you could just state your name for the record, please.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Bert Corey. I'm with DGT Associates. We're the surveyors and the civil engineers for this project. Just want to run through the updates to the site plans as we've discussed and talked about and incorporated as many of the comments from the council and the town agencies and the abutters as possible. I've numbered this site plan, make it easy to go through. Number 1 on the right-hand side of the plan is pointing to that existing house. That existing house is going to be raised. That started the domino effect to make the improvements to the site plan that you originally saw. From there, we were able to move the building more inbound of the site, moving it more towards the central location. With that, we also were able to move it further away from the property line so that all of the zoning setbacks could be met, not only for the building, but also for the canopies that were associated with the playground areas. Moving on to number 3, which was actually, that was a lot of discussion in the first hearing that we had, and that was with regards to the playground being between the building and Cambridge Road. By moving the building to the center of the site, we were able to slide that playground area over to the north side of the site between the building and the Cadillac dealership. Made for a much safer playground area. So that's positive number 1 with that. Positive number 2 was the setbacks. Moving on to the parking area. The parking area remained essentially the same type of a configuration, same number of parking spaces, just got moved closer to the south side of the site. One thing that it did offer, though, which came up in the discussions, was can you move the driveway further away from Day Circle? This allowed for that to happen. As you can see, number 5, coming off of Cambridge Road and into the parking area, that is about as far away from Day Circle as we can propose. The layout, though, also between the pavement markings and the signage allows for one-way flow through this parking area and back out onto Cambridge Road. Number 6, I'm pointing to an emergency overflow structure. We had a lot of discussions with the engineering department, DPW, fire department. There was some communications back and forth on that. We addressed water, we addressed sewer, and we addressed the storm drainage. The one last item that DPW was requesting is that we increase the size of the stone around this emergency overflow structure. There was some concern about what would happen on an overflow during the storm events. In fact, the way it's designed and taking advantage of the good soils that are on site with the size of that infiltration galley, we don't have any overflow for the 2, the 10, 25, and the 100-year storm event. What we did is we looked at creating a situation where we reduced the infiltration rate 70% to really effectively say that, let's say this thing was neglected for a long period of time, the soil interface got clogged and it started to back up. We were then able to force water out over the 25 and the 100-year storm event, which were coming out at less than scour or less than erosive velocities. It comes out at that emergency overflow. It travels about 65 feet along a riprap line swale where it eventually goes over to the Reeves School, and there's a catch basin over on their property. It would ultimately flow into that. Regardless, all of the peak flows and volumes for all storm events leading off of this site have been reduced. Number 7 was we had some discussions with regards to the abutter to the south. We wanted to provide screening. So we have that 6-foot white fence that is along the south property line. As it starts to get closer to that 25-foot front setback, it transitions to a 3-foot high fence. And then along that fence, and I'll pass on to the landscape plan, we have several plantings along there to offer a vegetative screening. So let me close this and go on to the landscape plan. This plan, we can see we have several plantings along the Cambridge Road. There's 11 trees that are planted there. I know 4 of them are pin oaks, 4 of them are red maple, and then 3 of them are birch trees, river birch. there was some thought about what happens if those trees grow large. They start to impact the sidewalk. We've been assured by the landscape architect that they are far enough away that they would not have any impact on heaving the bituminous sidewalk. Along the south property line, we do have, there's green giant arborvitaes. There's 8 of those proposed, and there's 17 eastern red cedar to provide that screening. We also line these up along the fence on that south property so that we would still maintain that snow storage that we had talked about. The snow storage equates to about 19% of the parking space too, so it's adequate snow storage. So I think the plans have been revised to reflect everything that we've discussed. I think it's a better plan. So thank you, and I'm going to turn it over to Mark right now.
Thank you.
Unless you, do you have any questions? I'm sorry. If you had any questions, I could, as while I'm here. Okay.
Any questions? Think we're good, sir. Thank you.
Mr. President, we also have Dan Mills here from MDM in case there's any questions with regard to traffic. Bob Michaud, partner Bob Michaud. Bob's in California.
Thank you.
The end of the story here is that essentially this is no longer a Dover Amendment project. We don't need any relief under the Dover Amendment. We meet all of the setback requirements. The use is the use, and the only thing that would be eligible for Dover relief is the sign. And there's been some suggestions about the rendering as the controlling sign. That there's a copy of the rendering in the file. I was asked what the dimensions of that sign would be, and it's 8 feet wide by 7 feet tall. It's essentially a sheet of plywood on a 3-foot podium. So that's the sign that we would propose to put at the location. I'm happy to answer any questions. I know that there's some potential conditions circulating. I'm prepared to address any concerns or issues that are inherent in those conditions.
Thank you, sir. Questions from the council? Yes, Councilor DeMambo.
Counselor, the sign that you mentioned, will that be a lit sign?
Hang on one second. I believe it's externally lit. Is that right, Shmuel? No lighting of it? Yeah, there's 2 lights, external lights that shine on it.
And those will be dark shade compliant and on dimmers or whatnot, so that it's not reflective out into the street and affecting anyone driving up and down the street.
I think whatever Primrose has is likely to be the end result here too.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, sir.
Anyone else from the council? Yes, Councilor Viola.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to say that we've been at this for a long time with this project, since last year, if not even longer. We've seen many renderings, many different phases of this project, and I'm happy to say I'm actually pleased with the way this has turned out. I think it'll better benefit the neighborhood as compared to some other things that could go in there by right, such as apartment buildings, anything else like that. More things that would be substantial, that would add more traffic, and that would deter or detract from the neighborhood. So I want to thank the petitioner for everything they've done to answer our questions, to better the building, make it look better off for the neighborhood, so it's not more of an eyesore.
Thank you, Councilor. We too feel that the process has made this a better project and that it will benefit the community to a greater extent than the original proposal that we made. So thank all of you for that and that incentive.
President Dillon?
Yes, Councilor Campbell.
Just one other comment, similar to what Councilor Viola was saying. There was a tremendous amount of work that was done to improve the original site design. When it first came forward to the 2 properties, trying to, in my view, squishing everything into those 2 pieces of property. It was not working at all. So I am thankful that we got to this point. The 1 piece of property works well. The house being torn down works well. It makes a huge difference the conditions that we have, I believe, are going to really just strengthen the petition to make sure that we don't have any issues with queuing and traffic, and so that the neighbors will be pleased what's being done. Also, the landscape plan, very important to me, because we kind of joke because I usually talk about the landscaping plan, but it makes a huge difference, especially in this particular project. Having the large trees as is depicted with you have oaks there, you have red maples, you have just a wonderful assortment. It's going to look nice from the street for the neighbors that are on the other side of this property. And that was really important to me, as well as making sure that it was going to function. So I did put also one of the conditions in, which you will see at the end, talking about that if, because what's usually on the plans, the landscape plans say that if for some reason the landscaper can change the design of the different shrubbery and trees and all of that if they don't have it in the nursery. So I strengthened it, saying that with tree and shrubbery substantial submissions to be approved by Committee on Special Permits. So if the trees and the shrubbery have to be changed out, the flowers, that's fine. I mean, the daylilies, all of that, it's really wonderful. But having the trees switched out or the shrubberies, which obviously we know how high they will grow, that could potentially change what the view is going to be for the neighbors. So that's why I put that in, and you are willing to have that in there, which I appreciate. So I do believe this is going to be an upgrade for that property.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, Councilor Papalato.
I too think you've done a commendable job to rejigger everything and move things around, but I feel like there's still serious concerns over the traffic and the safety in that area. Kids still need to cross that crosswalk there. It's going to add to the volume of traffic there. I know there's been a traffic study done. A lot of times we see those come in, and I haven't seen one yet in my short time where anybody says there's going to be some traffic issues here. So I have some serious concerns over that, as well as the fact that it feels like there's not going to be a large number of Woburn folks attending this facility. So it just feels like there's a lot of things that you've done, but I still have these major concerns out there.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilor Toro.
Excuse me. Council, I just want to thank you, similar to what Councilor Viola and some of the other councils have said, for all the concessions and working with the council and the neighbors on all the conditions. I think we need to also recognize the multiple neighbors and residents of the area, Day Circle and Cambridge Road, who has also been there kind of in every committee meeting, every council meeting, and advocating for the neighborhood. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for being such strong advocates for our city. We appreciate it. I think it's widely known, and it has been explicitly stated, that with the raising of that building, that you continue the special permits process as more of a courtesy and to work with the neighbors, as opposed to a necessity, as you know, you had the ability to build this project under the Dover Amendment without really any say by the council. So similar to what Councilor Papalato said, I'm not super supportive of the proposal. I appreciate the concessions and everything that the petitioner has agreed to, you know, but understanding the situation we're in and the Dover Amendment, and that's a state issue that needs to be addressed, not at a local level. You know, I'll be supporting the petition. And again, I appreciate your time, the petitioner's time, and all the residents' time as well, throughout the 6 months or so that this issue has been debated. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, Councilman Mercer Brown.
I'll save my comments when we get to the working conditions. And I assume we're going to do that at some point after we open the public hearing?
Sure.
Okay, thank you,
Sounds good.
President
Thank you.
Dillon. Oops.
I've been called worse. Anyone else? We good?
Motion open on the public hearing?
Second.
There's a second, a motion and a second to open the public hearing. Anyone who would like to speak on this matter, please step forward. How are you tonight?
Judy Stafford, 215 Cambridge Road. I wanted to also agree that this is a huge improvement over what was there before, and I'm feeling supportive of it even myself. I am the neighbor that lives to the south. One thing that concerned me, though, the lighting has been a concern, and I like the way it's written up, what the lighting will be, but it occurred to me a little while ago that it says that emergency lighting is okay all night, which makes sense, but I was realizing that there's no definition of emergency lighting. Like, could it be said that the parking lot needs to be emergency lit? And that's what I'm worried about, because it's right over my bedroom. So if they would just put some constraints on what emergency lighting means, that would help me feel better. But I like the project overall, so thank you.
Just on that
Thank
from
you.
the chair as well, I know in the past, the building commissioner has been involved in issues like that as well. So that may be an option to look at too. Anyone? Anyone else from the public before we close the public?
Counselor Dillon,
Yes,
I would strongly suggest if you're gonna talk about conditions, that you talk about them while the public hearing's open.
sure.
Previous
Thank you.
councils, there's been
Let's
questions.
do the conditions before we close the public hearing. Yes, Councilor Viola.
If I may submit for the record a list of 34 conditions. I'm sorry, 35 conditions.
Is this entitled Goddard School Conditions, that
Correct.
document? Thank you.
Okay. You wanna go over?
As a working draft?
As a working draft.
You wanna go over them for the public?
It should be a motion and then a second.
Make a motion that we receive these as a working draft?
Second.
There's a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Right. Number 1 on the working draft, the plan of record shall be the plan entitled Civil Site Plan for the Goddard School, sheets C1, C2, C3, C4, C5, C6, C7, C8, C9, C10, C11, C12, C13, C14, C15, ST1, dated July 4th, 2023, revised December 18th, 23, revised February 2nd, 2024, and sheet L1 dated July 24th, 2023, revised February 2nd, 2024,
Revised.
revised December 28th, 2023, prepared by Cosmos Associates. And then I'd like to add, at the end of that, all plans of record shall be required to be filed with the Inspectional Services Department. Number 2, regular hours of operation shall be Monday to Friday from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then I'm going to add in, with occasional parent nights, open houses, and other special events on weekday evenings until 9:30 p.m., not to exceed 3 times a month, and Saturdays from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Number 3, all exterior lighting shall be directed downward, dark sky compliant, to minimize light pollution and shedding of light onto adjoining properties. Number 4, all exterior lighting shall be shut off from the hours of 7 a.m. to 6:30 p.m., except for special events as noted above. In, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. From 7 p.m. to 6:30 a.m., except for special events as noted above. and emergency and security lighting. And that would be to be shut off by 10:30 PM.
May I ask a question, please?
Yep.
4, all exterior lighting shall be shut off from the hours of 7 PM to 6:30 PM, except for
I'm sorry, except for special events
Special- special events
as noted in condition number 2.
noted
And,
and emergency and security lighting.
correct, and then I'm going to add, during special events as noted in condition number 2, exterior lighting shall be shut off by 10:30 PM.
Mr. President,
Yes.
may I make a suggestion
Please.
to Councilor Viola? Councilor Viola, may I suggest that maybe to satisfy some of the concerns regarding the exterior lighting or the emergency lighting, that it's limited to the structure?
Sure.
I don't know if the petitioner would be okay with that.
Mr. President, that would be acceptable.
Thank you, sir.
I'm going to stay here in case this happens. again.
Thank you, sir.
So I will add after,
May I ask just that this be reread
Yep.
all the way through again? So all exterior lighting shall be shut off from the hours of 7 PM to 6:30 PM, except for special events as noted in condition number 2, and emergency and security lighting. Do you still want to keep the language during special events, exterior lighting shall be shut off by 10 PM? Or is that stricken now?
that is stricken. And then we'll
And so
say,
you're adding the language,
yep, we're gonna add the language, all exterior lighting shall be on the building.
Emergency lighting.
Emergency lighting, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Number 5, all clients shall be informed that no queuing of traffic is allowed on Cambridge Road. Number 6, all clients shall be informed that on-street parking shall not be allowed on Cambridge Road, Day Circle, Mayflower Road, or Parker Street. Number 7, except in the event of emergency, work on the exterior of the site shall be from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday to Friday, and 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Saturdays. No work on the site shall be permitted on Sunday or state or federal holidays recognized by the city of Woburn. Number 8,
sure, it should be, sorry to correct, it should be and, not or, so it should be and state and federal holidays?
yes.
Thank you.
Number 8, all buildings must be tested for asbestos prior to any demolition occurring. Inspectional Services, Board of Health, and City Council should be notified of the results of testing. If asbestos is found, then all federal and state regulations for asbestos abatement shall be followed, and abutting properties shall be notified. Number 9, when demolition of the building occurs, water must be utilized to minimize dust in the air, and there shall be no stockpiling of demolition debris on the property for more than 2 weeks. Number 10, the white vinyl fence between 215 Cambridge Road and the petitioner's property shall be no higher than 6 feet tall and shall be no greater than 3 feet tall within the 25-foot front setback.
You want me to add front setback?
Yes, please.
Yep, okay.
11, the white vinyl fence between the petitioner's property and 215 Cambridge Road shall be maintained by the petitioner in perpetuity. Number 12, all dumpsters shall be enclosed by a means of a fence, wall, or landscaping in compliance with the Woburn zoning ordinances, have pest control, and shall be emptied between the hours of 7 a.m. and 5 p.m., Monday to Friday.
Councilor Viola?
Yes.
Can we put opaque fence? That was something that the planning board had recommended by means of an opaque fence.
Okay. So I will amend that to state in an opaque fence. Number 13, there should be adequate rodent control in place prior to the commencement of any site disturbance and maintained throughout all site development and construction phases. The petitioner shall provide monthly rodent control reports to the Board of Health and Department of Inspectional Services. Number 14, no idling of construction vehicles on the property according to Mass General Law, Chapter 90, Section 16A. Number 15, all students shall be escorted into the child care center by an adult. There should be no live parking or dropping off of students at the entrance of the child care center. Number 16, the applicant shall make a financial contribution towards the purchase of a pedestrian-activated flashing beacon at the crosswalk between 215 and 219 Cambridge Road. The City of Woburn is responsible for designing and submitting this safety upgrade on Cambridge Road for approval by the Massachusetts Department of Transportation. Upon approval by MassDOT, the City of Woburn shall purchase and install the pedestrian-activated flashing beacon. It's the responsibility of the City of Woburn to provide the petitioner with documentation for the total cost of the equipment, and the petitioner shall reimburse the City of Woburn half the cost incurred by the City of Woburn for purchasing said equipment not to exceed $15,000. Such payment shall be made by the petitioner within 30 days after installation by the City of Woburn.
Sorry,
Yes.
President Dillon, may I?
Yes.
On this particular condition, I just wanted to suggest that we have tighten up the language just a little bit. I know the city has agreed to, and we have a commitment from the city that we will pay for this beacon. The city will pay for this beacon, and the petitioner is going to contribute up to $15,000. But there doesn't appear to be any time frame in this condition on when these things should happen. And if we were conditioning this for anybody else, whether it's the city or someone, we would include things like that. So sentence number 2, the City of Woburn is responsible for designing and submitting this safety upgrade on Cambridge Road for approval by the Massachusetts Department of Transportation. I would like to add to this sentence, and will begin this process upon approval of this special permit. That's my first suggestion. And then upon approval from the Massachusetts Department of Transportation, the City of Woburn shall purchase and install the pedestrian-activated flashing beacons prior to occupancy permits. That is my suggestion. The way this reads right now, the City of Woburn could do this in 20 years.
Right, I agree.
I believe the expectation is that this is part of the special permit. It needs to be done, and I think it needs to be spelled out regardless of the fact that it's us that's going to be doing it.
Yes.
So that's my suggestion. I'll make it in the form of a motion, actually.
Second.
Both of them is one?
May I comment, Mr. President?
Yes, please, Attorney Babowski.
I'm a little worried with the prior to occupancy in the suggested condition because it limits our occupancy to your work, and we have no guarantee that you're going to do that forthwith. I have no problem with timing it, but I'd rather say something like, upon approval from the Mass Department of Transportation, the city will purchase and install pedestrian activated flashing beacons within X days or months, but not hinging, we're waiting to occupy while you're waiting to do the work.
Understood.
That seems like it could be a potential drag on us.
Yes.
The only reason I am very concerned about this is because if it's not clear that there is an expectation that this be done and it is a priority, if we don't spell it out, maybe we don't use occupancy, but there has to be some expectation set by the city, us,
Yes.
that there is an expectation it's going to be done
Yes.
within a certain time frame. So if we don't use occupancy, then maybe we could use a time frame within, 6 months or 9 months, or there needs to be a timeline. I strongly suggest that to this council.
I think it's 6 months, I think it's pretty good. I'll withdraw my second on that motion before.
And whatever the language we agree on, I really feel strongly about that. I don't want to leave this flagging in the wind.
Sure. Councilor Demas.
I understand my colleague's intent, with the matter, and I do believe we need to put some sort of compromise language in with a time frame. But I also want to caution, there's a third party involved in this discussion. It's Mass DOT. And without their approvals, we can't move forward with the work, and then the petitioner wouldn't have their occupancy permit for quite some time. So I would just caution that any language that we decide on doesn't tie both the city's hands and the petitioner's hands at the behest of Mass DOT, because they're not known for working expeditiously. So I just want to caution that, but I think some sort of time frame would behoove all the parties involved, just to make sure that we can get this done.
Councilor Mercer Bruin.
It was pointed out in one of our public meetings, when the question was asked, did you consult Mass Highway about this beacon? And they, said, well, we don't have to. They'll say yes. This is not something they'll say no to. But that's all the more reason why we need to have some sort of time frame on it, so it does become a priority of the city. Let's face it, we all know priorities change all the time here in the city, every day. This isn't something we want to be deprioritized. So that's the only reason I'm trying to put such a fine point on this, whatever the language is. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Yes.
if
Councilor Viola.
if I may add for the time frame, maybe 6 months? I think that would be, sound about right.
I encourage you to encourage yourself to do this within 60 days. But we don't want to wait for occupancy, because it's just going to be a building
Right.
sitting there
Understood.
with nothing in it.
Understood.
So if you want to have something that self-imposes a 60-day purchase and install requirement, which is the sentence that this is attached to, we have no objection to that. But I don't think, we're not comfortable with occupancy being hinged on that.
Understood.
President, what about within 6 months of the issuance of the special permit?
Councilor Babowski, you comfortable with that?
No,
I-
not
I-
tied to occupancy, through the chair,
I
not tied.
understand, but
yeah.
now I take the comments of Councilor with regard to DOT and their own pace. I think hinging it upon approval by MassDOT is a better idea. You may not get approval of MassDOT, just anticipating the worst, because they're unpredictable in some ways. But if they do give you the approval, it seems reasonable to me that you would know that that's coming, and 60 days is a very reasonable period of time for you to put these minor appurtenances on the crosswalk.
I'd be very concerned if we did not get approval for this. This is a very important piece for the residents.
It's
So,
just a
and I heard from people from your own camp, attorney, that said, oh, this would be a no-brainer for a Mass Highway, as long as they don't have to pay for it. So again, I strongly suggest that we include some language, and I'll be happy to compromise and not tie it to occupancy, but something needs to be included.
Yes, Councilor Toro.
I agree that we should do some sort of timeline, similar to what Council Viola and Council Mercer Bruin has said, but I also agree that we should not tie it to occupancy, because it's something beyond their control, and if they meet the conditions that we've imposed on them, or agreed to, it shouldn't tie them to opening up the daycare, as long as the city's working towards it.
Attorney Babowski, do you feel comfortable with a certain time frame that you feel comfortable with?
It's, as I said, it's your timetable, so as long as occupancy's not hitched to it, I'm fine.
Okay,
Okay, good.
so,
President Dillon, I'm comfortable with what Councilor Mercer Bruin had said, and install pedestrian activated flashing beacons within 6 months of the issuance of the special permit. I am comfortable with that. 6 months is a good amount of time, and this is obviously something that Councilor Viola and us and myself we're going to start working on right away, so.
yes, Councilor DeMambro.
My 2 cents is this: I think if this is such an intricate piece to this puzzle, then Mass DOT needs to be brought on board immediately, so that we can get the ball rolling with them, even if their process is a little bit convoluted and a little bit delayed. I think they need to be almost one of the first players at the table so that they're informed of this, and then give them, 90 days, 60 days, whatever it is, but get that ball rolling ASAP, whoever the contractor is, or if it's the city of Woburn or whoever.
Councilor Viola.
To Councilor DeMambro's point, I have spoken with our city engineer, Jay Corey, so he is well aware of it and he knows of the issue.
He needs to ride them.
Attorney Babowski, anything?
Just checking with Mr. Mills as to whether or not he thinks this is a likely approval, quick approval from MassDOT, and he thought that it would be, so.
And I just had one final comment. I know the city has agreed to pay for the beacon with the $15,000. Perhaps we might want to include that somewhere in the condition. You don't have to, but, I'm one who likes to see it all spelled out. But at the end of the day, that's a suggestion. In terms of the other thing, I'm satisfied.
Yeah, so I'll make the motion that we are going to put into the condition, install pedestrian activated flashing beacons within 6 months of the issuance of the special permit.
So after shall purchase and install pedestrian-activated flashing beacons, that's where you want to add it?
Yes.
And what was that again, please? Sorry.
Yep, within 6 months of the issuance of the special permit.
Second.
Second the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
All right.
Moving on, Councilor Viola.
Condition number 17, subject to the approval from Mass Department of Transportation, the petitioner shall pay and install school signage in accordance with the manual on uniform traffic control devices to advise road users on Cambridge Road they are approaching a school area. One side is proposed in each direction of Cambridge Road in advance of the existing site driveway prior to the issuance of an occupancy permit.
18.
Number 18, this special permit shall be issued to Suntree Estates LLC, and that any transfer of this special permit shall be subject to the approval of the Committee on Special Permits to determine if the new petitioner meets the guidelines of the Dover Amendment, and additionally is in good standing with all licensure requirements by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and Board of Health. And additionally, the Committee on Special Permits shall make a finding that the impacts of the potential new special permit holder are similar or less impactful to the area, and if any of these conditions are not met by the Committee on Special Permits, shall refer the petition back to the full City Council for a public hearing. Number 19, sidewalks and roadways shall be kept open and clear during demolition and construction. Number 20, the petitioner shall receive approval from the Historical Commission prior to tearing down structures on the lots according to Woburn Municipal Code Title 15, and prior to the issuance of the building permit, the removal of the structures on the lot are required before construction can begin. Number 21, handicap parking spaces shall be striped, be painted with the Universal Handicap Accessible Parking logo, and have proper signage indicating that the handicapped accessible parking space in perpetuity. 22, all striping, painting of driveway, and signage on property must be inspected yearly and must be restriped or painted if wearing is occurring. 23, all Cape Cod berms shall be inspected annually, and any damaged portions of the Cape Cod berm curbing shall be expeditiously repaired and/or replaced. 24, a snow plow and storage plan shall be placed on file with the building commissioner. 25, when excessive amounts of snow occur, snow must be removed off property. 26, all landscaping shall be maintained in perpetuity by the petitioner. Any trees or shrubs that die must be replaced. 27, no construction vehicles will be allowed to park on Cambridge Road, Day Circle, Mayflower Road, or Parker Street. 28, prior to construction, a construction route plan shall be filed with the building commissioner and the city council. 29, signage shall be shown on the site plans prepared by DGT Associates and submitted by the applicant, with revisions through February 2nd, 2024, and as depicted on the rendering prepared by Port One Companies entitled Goddard School, 205 Cambridge Road, Woburn, Mass. Street view perspective. No neon or other internally illuminated signage shall be permitted. Number 30, external exterior signage lighting shall be shut off between the hours of 7 p.m. and 6:30 a.m. Number 31, there shall be no overnight parking on site. Number 32, I'm going to strike. Next condition, any coal or similar debris on site shall be removed by the petitioner prior to the commencement of construction. 33, the petitioner shall construct and improve the site as substantially described on the plans of record set forth in condition 1. Herein, although design adjustments and modifications generally associated with preparing so-called working drawings or site conditions shall be permitted, so long as such changes do not constitute substantial changes from said plans as determined by the building commissioner. In the event that the building commissioner determines that the building plans filed with the building permit application are not in substantial conformance with the site plan, the petitioner may request a review of said plans by the City Council Committee on Special Permits by direct petition to the Committee on Special Permits, who shall make a final determination. If the Special Permits Committee makes a determination that the proposed plans are not in conformance with site plan, the petitioner shall be required to file a special permit petition seeking approval to modify site plan. Number 34, plant substitutions as shown on sheet L1, the landscape plan, will be allowed based on best availability of nursery stock with tree and shrubbery, and I'm going to insert the word substantial, substitutions to be approved by Committee on Special Permits. And then I have a couple more conditions that I'm going to add. Number 35, the petitioner shall be required to obtain Mass DOT permits for both access and utilities to Cambridge Road.
I'm sorry, is that what's in?
Yes, it is. That was Jay. Once you're ready, Clerk Higgins, let me know.
And you said up to access and utilities, that first sentence there?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Condition 36, there is only one road opening at this time on Cambridge Road with a minimum of 100 feet of 2-inch grid and, 2-inch grind and inlay be required curb to curb for restoration. Any additional road openings, I'd strike that. So,
Up to restoration.
yep. Condition 37, any additional road openings shall require the same restoration as condition 36. Condition 38, construction fencing shall be erected prior to demolition and remain up during building. And that's all I have.
Attorney Bobrowski, you good?
Yes, Mr. President, thank you very much.
Very good. What's the will of the council?
I'm sorry, the last one is construction fencing shall be erected prior to construction in, what was that last part?
Prior to demolition and...
Demolition, sorry.
Yep,
Prior to demolition and,
and remain up during construction.
thank you.
You're welcome.
I make a motion to approve the petition with the 38 conditions stated.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the petition. All in,
You still have the public hearing open.
Yes, we do. I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you.
a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
And I make a motion to approve the petition with the 38 conditions stated.
There is a
Second.
motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Thank you and good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Bobrowski.
My agenda.
Thank you for your help.
I'm just gonna wait a moment. if that's all right.
Yeah, sure. That,
Next item on the agenda is on the petition by Citizens Bank for a special permit with site plan review under sections 11.6, subsection 10, section 7.3, sections 13.5, and section 18.4 for the demolition of a portion of the building and construction of a new building addition with drive-up ATM service at 1 Commerce Way. A communication dated February 2nd, 2024 was received from Greg Ream, Assistant City Engineer. And that's the only communications we have.
Good evening, gentlemen. How are you tonight?
Good evening.
I'll make a motion that we accept the communications and make it part of the permanent record.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Could you just state, I don't think I have the turn on.
Gentlemen, your names and companies,
I'm trying to
please.
get this up first.
Yeah.
Need those directions?
It's HDMI, so I don't know if it's on HDMI.
Okay.
Have 24 hours to change my vote? I don't wanna do that.
I have hard copies, I could.
I didn't realize that, because he said, I asked him that question. If I'm opposed, he'll say all in favor. To go what?
I had the same problem last time.
And then he said,
Went to settings and I played with it.
that's not what he said, and he said, he'll ask if anyone is opposed. So I was waiting for that to happen.
I did.
I'll talk to him after.
Put it down to like.
It's not a big problem anyway.
Aspect ratio that you possibly could do. So it's picking it up. Just click on that. Yeah, I don't know how you do it on that, but just with the aspect ratio, it should show up.
Want to ask Joe?
I think it's the port.
That'll be a beat on it.
I'll ask Joe.
When I did, I played with the aspect ratio and it not working.
Yeah, I'm not seeing.
I make a motion to take a 5-minute break.
Second.
Second.
Go to your settings.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Well, I don't know about on this.
on that last vote for the Goddard School, I want to be clear that my vote was opposed.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Sorry about the confusion.
No worries.
You have the floor, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Alan Roscoe from TF Moran. We are here on behalf of the applicant, which is Citizens Bank. With me tonight is Bruce Bisbano from Bisbano and Associates. They're the architectural lead directing this project. And we're here tonight on behalf of the applicant seeking your consent and support for a special permit related to the renovations here at this site at 1 Commerce Way. This occupies the northeast corner of Mishawam Road and Commerce Way, adjacent to the Woburn Mall, and is the existing site of the Citizens Bank. This wants to be a remodel, it wants to be a tear-down rebuild, but it's really none of those things. This is, the best way to describe it is a renovation. This bank was built in the mid-'80s and predates some of the current codes, which brings us back into the realm of seeking permits to do any construction on the site. And the trigger here is the drive-through. But we're seeking site plan approval, special permit for the drive-through, and a couple of findings that we're calling housekeeping that go along with the overall project. So one of the biggest aspects of this project is we would like to keep the mechanical room on the site. All of the infrastructure is already in place that runs to this room to serve the facility. And we're going to demolish the remainder of the building and rebuild with about a 3,000 square foot addition. So we will have sort of an L-shaped building here at the end, and the mechanical room will occupy the northwest corner of the site, and there is a 22.6 foot setback that exists off of the street. The current allowable is 25 feet. So we're seeking a finding or a special permit to allow that mechanical room to remain in place. That has the electrical, all the mechanicals, and some of the other infrastructure that will serve the facility. So we have the benefit of already having sewer, water, electric, and other utilities on the site. So we won't need to do any alteration of Commerce Way or Mishawam Road. We can keep all of our work on site. We propose to retain the existing driveway configuration and the traffic pattern so that everyone that is used to banking at this facility will have the same entry drive, exit drive, and then there is a common two-way drive in the back that goes to Bertucci's. So that will remain in place and be for the convenience of the customers. We will have one drive-through lane. The existing bank, or when it was built, has 4. So there'll be a marked decrease in the number of drive-through lanes. We also wish to install an ATM in the bank's lobby. So there'll be 2 ATMs serving the site. The parking count will remain unchanged because of the zoning requirements. We are still able to meet local codes with 20 parking spaces. And we'll also be providing infrastructure for EV charging stations so that it should be plug and play when time comes to add an EV charging station to the facility. Those are the high points, and you know, the benefits that we have here are, even though we're adding to the size of the building, overall imperviousness is going to decrease. The addition occupies largely what's already paved, so through some conservative design, we were able to provide less impervious area so that we'll have a reduction in stormwater as well. So those are the benefits, and again, we're seeking your support for a special permit to allow the drive-through use, which meets all of the standards for the special permit. And we have 3 findings. One is to allow the mechanical room to remain in its present position. The other is to allow the pylon base sign to remain in place at the intersection. It's currently within the setback. Another firm will be coming forward if required to do the signage part, but the pylon base, we would like to remain in its present position. And the final one would be create a finding that this is not an intensification of the proposed use. So.
Questions from the council? Yes, Councilor
Thank
Bourne.
you, President Dillon. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Just a couple of things. First, I think that the addition is significant enough that we probably will go to at least one committee meeting. I'd like an opportunity to talk to our city engineer. You've seen the communication from the engineering department?
No, I'm sorry, I've not.
Oh, gosh, okay. You should probably see that. It's dated February 2nd from our assistant city engineer. And it talks about the traffic flow. And in that paragraph, he said the proposed site redevelopment will utilize the existing curb cut configuration along Commerce Way and the existing exit along the northerly property line over an existing access easement. The proposed layout will eliminate 3 islands, we know that, and services will provide only 1 ATM at the back side of the building. The proposal may result in more vehicles in line and longer queue times and may have an impact on the entrance driveway from Commerce Way. And there was a suggestion here that the applicant can address this situation to the if you can address this situation to the satisfaction of the council, and I would like to be satisfied that it's not going to be an issue. And then there was also a comment about the ability to send traffic to the Lowe's driveway. And I'd like to hear your comments on that. And if you're not prepared to discuss that tonight, perhaps you could take a look at this memo.
Sure.
And then when we're in committee, be prepared to talk about it a little
Very
more.
well.
And what I will also do, while we're waiting to go to committee, I will go speak to our city engineer and Jay Duran and a couple of others to make sure I have all of the information I need. I don't take any exception to the project. I just want to make sure that we're not causing, as you said, any additional harm or making this
Correct.
situation. And if you asked me to vote on that tonight, I couldn't honestly say that because I don't have enough information yet.
No, we don't expect this as a one and done
Okay.
by any means.
And certainly, I don't think
Yeah.
we need to drag it out for months and months, but at least one
We need to make an
committee meeting.
informed
Exactly.
decision.
Yeah.
Understood.
Okay, thank you so much.
But I can add, the two-way access to the rear is an existing condition. There is an easement, and it does allow people to get out to that
Yep.
adjoining street and to the restaurant, because that side of Commerce Way is one way. So it does provide a benefit, and we saw no reason to eliminate a portion of that in terms of access, especially for emergency vehicles and all those kinds of things, all the good reasons why we have that. But that being said, I'm happy to review the memo, and if there are any other comments from other city departments, I'd love to see those as well.
Okay. May I ask your name again? I missed it at the beginning.
Alan Roscoe.
Okay, you are, okay, I just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure.
I'm all set for now, President Dillon. Thank you so much, and thank
you.
you, gentlemen.
Anyone else? Yes, Councilor DeMambro.
I appreciate the fact that on this design, you keep that mechanical room in place so that you, like you had well stated, that you won't be disrupting, making any street cuts and rerouting any type of piping and conduit and this and that. So keeping that mechanical room in place, I think, is a smart move. And that benefits the city of Woburn as well as your project. So I appreciate that from your designers and your engineers, so I thank you.
Applying common sense always works.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
Motion and second to open public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
That passes. Anyone here would like to speak on this petition, please come forward.
I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing to the regular meeting of February 20th, and that the matter be referred to the Committee on Special Permits.
Second.
Second.
The motion and the second, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes. Thank you. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. Good evening.
Gentlemen. there's the memo to which I referred. Thank you. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is Madison, excuse me, Madison Woburn Holding LLC for a modification to a special permit under section 5.120A, section 5.1 subsection 29, and section 5.1 note 16 to allow for a fast food restaurant and for amended site plan for previously issued special permit at 369 Washington Street. The communication dated February 5th, 2024 was received from Councilor Darlene Mercer Bruin regarding 369 Washington illegal left turns.
Make a motion to accept that email from Cummings Properties as part of the permit record.
Second.
Motion and a second to accept that. All in favor?
Aye.
That passes. Attorney Tabby, how are you?
Okay, for the record, Joseph Tabby, Reuben and Redmond, 500 Unicorn Park Drive in Woburn, here on behalf of the applicant Madison Woburn Holdings, LLC. So just to refresh your memory, this is an special permit request for a fast food restaurant. The idea would be that the Starbucks at 200 West Cummings Park would move across the street into Woburn Landing. There's no drive-through. That's part of this proposal. Hours of operation, 5 a.m. to 11 p.m., with the Starbucks located in approximately 2,800 and some change square feet next to the 110 Grill. So at the Special Permits Committee meeting on January 22nd, we were asked by Councilor Toro to provide the actual number of customer transactions during certain peak hours, January 6, 2024, which is a Saturday from 9 to 11 a.m., January 8, 2024, so Monday 7 to 9 a.m., and January 11, 2024, which was a Thursday 7 to 9 a.m. Scott Thornton will review those actual transactions in comparison to the ITE figures in a few minutes. Also, Scott will also review the email that was received from Cummings Property. But before he does that, I'd like to comment on the references in that email that were outlined in blue. The blue highlighting infers that the references are standards that are used in the traffic design industry that came from certain publications that govern that, and I've found to the contrary. So what I'd like to do is, I have 10 copies of documents I'm going to be referring to as I address those 3 highlighted blue areas. If I could submit those for the record, please.
Make a motion.
We receive and make it part of the permit record?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I only bring this up because I want to share with you what I found in my research of these 3 items. They're highlighted in blue, which the intention would be to the reader that these are important regulations. So when I Googled the first highlighted area, analysis of right-in, right-out commercial driveway safety operations and use of channelization as compliance countermeasure, my Google search came up empty. There was a subtopic under that, you can see in the first document, that talked about right in, right out, but it just had a simple explanation for write in and write out. You know, perhaps there is a document, but we could not find it on the internet. More troubling is the next reference to 974 Mass 3.04 4D. And I was familiar with this regulation because I've done development for clients up at Fort Devens. So this reference came straight from site plan review regulations that were adopted specifically for the Devens Enterprise Commission, which is the commission like the city council that oversees development of the Fort Devens property. This regulation regulates the redevelopment of Devens by establishing detailed site plan review requirements. That's the one that's highlighted. Right on top, 974 CMR Devens Enterprise Commission. It only applies to the development at Fort Devens. The third reference talked about federal highway safety desirable lane width. Well, when I looked at that, they're talking about lane widths for roadways and highways, not curb cuts, similar to the one at Woburn Landing. So I wanted you to have this information. Maybe there's contrary information to what I found, but I want this council to have accurate information as they evaluate what's been presented to them. So what I'd like to do at this time is introduce Scott Thornton of Vanessa Associates, who will go over the transactions that were requested by Councilor at Large Toro, as well as address the suggestions in the email. So, Scott?
Thank you, Joe. Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. For the record, Scott Thornton with Vanessa Associates, conducting the traffic analysis on behalf of the project. And as Joe indicated, I have a few slides going over some of the findings that we had based on the last meeting with the council, and also with a review of the items that were provided in the email from Cummings. So we were able to get transaction data from the existing Starbucks store, and we looked for, as Joe indicated, the data for Saturday, January 6th, Monday, January 8th, and Thursday, January 11th. I think the council had asked for a Monday, a Thursday, and a Saturday for transaction data. So we were able to get it for the period, the 2-hour period, 7 to 9 on Monday and Thursday, and then the 2-hour period, 9 to 11 on Saturday. And the difference is there because in the Saturday time period, the morning, with this use, the morning shifts, the morning peak hour shifts to later in the morning. So during the 2-hour period on Monday, there were 97 transactions, and that works out to be an average of 49 transactions per hour. On Thursday, there were a higher number, 118, during the 2-hour period, which works out to be an average of 59 transactions per hour. And on Saturday, there were 128 transactions during the 2-hour period, which works out to be 64 transactions per hour. So we compared that with what we had estimated for the ITE, using the ITE data. And the weekday, and the ITE numbers were based on peak hours, right? Not the 2-hour period, but for the weekday period, the peak hours, 7 to 8. And again, this is kind of, it's apples and, small apples, not quite apples to apples, because one's transactions, one's trips. And we're assuming that the transactions equal the trips with the new site. That's actually pretty conservative. You could have 2 people in one car, have 2 transactions, that's still only 1 car coming in. So anyway, in the morning, 134 transactions or cars entering with the ITE data. Compare that even with the highest Thursday time period, the actual transaction data is 56% lower than the ITE data for that hour. On the Saturday time period, again, later in the day, probably 10 to 11, the ITE data indicated slightly less than 81 cars. I believe it was like 76 or so cars entering, 81 cars exiting. We assumed the higher number to represent the transactions. 81 transactions per hour is, as compared with the transaction data was 21% lower than the ITE data. So in the cases that we looked at, the transactions are fewer than what we had initially estimated using the ITE data for the site. The next slide, the next few slides go through sort of a response to thanks, Tim. So as Joe indicated, there were a few references to industry design standards. They had also provided a few plots of sketches of the driveway with recommended changes. So they had 2 options for revisions to the existing DOT-approved driveway. And again, this was approved by Mass DOT. Went through a design process and several iterations of review and design level, and that resulted in the applicant receiving a permit from Mass DOT with an approved driveway design. So as Joe indicated, the quote-unquote industry design standards used are not actually design standards that apply to a driveway. We were actually able to find the first reference, the first highlighted link. It was to a graduate student's thesis paper from 2017, which is not a design standard. Joe indicated the design standards for developments in the Fort Devens Regional Enterprise Development Zone. We wouldn't expect that standards for Woburn would apply in Devens, and likewise, we wouldn't expect standards from Devens to apply here. And then also there were lane standards for freeways. The third reference was for lane standards for freeways, expressways, rural 2-lane highways, and urban arterials, and not specifically driveways for Mass DOT jurisdictional roadway. So we don't think that DOT would accept these documents for design, and we have an approved Mass DOT design. Just to close it out, we did look at the 2 Cummings options for the driveway and found them lacking for truck access. So this is the existing configuration, and again, this base is from the Cummings email, Cummings attachments. We were able to superimpose a path of a truck entering and exiting the driveway. So this shows that the truck is successfully able to enter and exit the right in, right out driveway. This is based on the existing configuration. The next, option 1, where they had recommended tightening up or putting an extension on the center island of 4 feet in order to try to close off the entering driveway from left-turning traffic going into the site. It's shown that the truck would have to drive over that, and I assume, their email references physical impediments to access, to prohibit drivers from making the left-turn maneuver. I can only assume that means a raised island there, a 6-foot or a 6-inch curb reveal. So a truck would not be able to drive over that. And again, if you look at the design, it's really, it doesn't do much to change the overall throat width, right in this area. So really all it does is it restricts the truck access. And then the other option where they wanted to, it's hard to see because of the scale, but they wanted to really enlarge the island quite a bit, add a 6-foot extension to the island on the entering barrel and a 4-foot extension to the exiting barrel. In this case, the truck has no chance of getting in or getting out without driving over the curb and, causing some kind of damage. So with this option, the trucks are not able to enter or exit. So again, just to wrap it up, the transaction data from the existing Starbucks store is indicating between 21% and 56% fewer transactions than expected with the ITE data. Cummings suggestions are not based on any standard for design applicable to the right and right out driveway, which has been permitted and approved by DOT. The suggestions to modify the island are not based on DOT standards. They want to promote the access for these trucks. This would restrict the truck access to the site. It would increase congestion in the area because trucks would have to go up to Tower Park Drive and come in. And then our recommendation is the previously proposed signage and pavement plan from January 22nd, where we've got the access as it is. We've got some additional pavement marking for the exiting barrel, and we've got some additional no left turn signs that are proposed. And there was a comment about drivers seek to make this maneuver because they want to make it, or because it's easier for them to do it because of the design. There's actually 15 driveways between this driveway and Cedar Street, and none of them have this type of right in, right out restriction. So, it could be that people are just expecting that the left turn is there for all of them. But in any event, we think that this will discourage motorists from making that left turn into the site, and we think that this is the best solution for the current situation. So, happy to answer any questions or turn it back over to Attorney Tarby.
Councilor DeMambro.
So as for that island, when I looked at that truck, the first thing that came to mind was Tower 1, our fire truck. And if he's got to go in there, and time is of the essence, I don't need him popping tires going in there with a 6-inch granite curb that will easily cut fire apparatus tires. And I have heard of complaints of that from the Woburn Fire Department with narrow entrances and exits, and them trying to get their vehicles and their apparatus. So, I not only see it as delivery trucks and patrons that are driving a truck, but the number one vehicle that came to mind was Tower 1, entering and exiting that facility. So, in that case, I will not support that island getting any larger. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Mercer Bruin.
Thank you. Your reference to number of driveways up until Cedar Street, you're referring to the entrances to the Cummings property, correct? Along Washington Street?
It's just all the driveways, right?
Right, okay. And none of those are restricted?
No.
Okay. And I know that. I'm asking so the people at home can understand what we're talking about.
Sure.
I understand the conundrum here. Certainly, I appreciate Councilor DeMambro pointing out the fire trucks. That's important. We're not going to do anything that's going to impair the fire trucks from getting in and out, but I know that there was another petition recently in front of us where we were told that this wouldn't work for the fire trucks, and turns out when we talked to like the fire chief and people who looked at it, they said, oh, we can make it work if you do it this way. So I'll ask you, have you consulted with Chief Kenton and the folks from the fire department at all?
We have not.
Okay. So I think we probably need to do that, because again, I've heard in the past that we can't, and then all of a sudden we could. So I'd appreciate that. I don't want to hold you folks up. I don't think this is a bad location. I think it's the lesser of two evils, frankly. On the other side of the street, the movement out and making that turn is awful. Awful. It was pointed out that, at least on this side, it's signalized. So I take that very seriously. But again, I would like you to ask the question to Chief Kenton and the fire department about what could be done to that island, if anything. If they say nothing, it is what it is. They're the experts in their equipment.
Could I just ask a
Sure.
question? Just so I understand what you're asking. We've shown this proposed plan as the best way for trucks to get in. Are you suggesting we ask the fire department if we narrow it down, can they still make it
Yes.
in?
Yes. The other trucks, with all due respect, I know that it would make it difficult for other trucks to get in here, but is that the additional traffic for the trucks to go up one, I don't want to say exit, but up to the tower office? Is the additional traffic from that happening going to be worse, or people trying to make the illegal turn into this site? What's going to tie up the traffic worse? I've seen people on a regular basis doing that turn. So I want to see something, not signage. It doesn't work. So I'm trying to find a compromise here that will allow the trucks to still do what they need to do, especially our safety apparatus trucks, but also deter the people that are making that turn. And I will say one thing about the signage. I don't think people realize the way it's positioned. I don't think they know in time that you're not supposed to make that turn. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people just do whatever they feel like doing. But again, I'm not trying to stop this project. I'm trying to make it the best we can. I don't have any control over where it was before at all. If the council had control over that, believe me, it would have stopped a long time ago, those turns out of there. This, we do have some say. I'd like to find a way to make it work. And by the way, I appreciate Starbucks coming up with that additional information. That was very, very helpful, and I thank Councilor Toro for asking for it.
Well, again, I just think that this curb cut is safer than all the curb cuts going up and down Washington Street, where some of them have double lefts out, double rights out. You just look at Google Maps and you can see them all. And
I can see
this is
that.
gonna be the
I can see
safest-
that. You're right. You're absolutely right.
Safest curb cut along Washington Street, other than the one at the traffic light.
Yeah,
Like a rumble strip or something.
Yeah, and, the crash data, there's no crashes involved with this driveway. There's none that show up in the data. So at this location, there's been 3 since the site opened, since Woburn Landing opened. And it was one going into Dewey, making a right turn in, one making a left turn, one making a right turn into Dewey, one making a left turn into Dewey, one making a left turn out. And there haven't been any crashes at the Woburn Landing driveway itself. So I think that while people are still And I agree with you. I've seen people make those turns in there. But I don't see people hanging out there waiting while there's a huge slug of traffic that's moving up. They seem to take the opportunity, take the gap when it exists. So, is it ideal? No. Does it work? I think it does.
And I will concede the point that I believe that it absolutely works better than the way it was working across the street. I'd like to hear from my fellow counselors who also are very familiar with this area like me. So, thank you. Thank you, President Dillon.
You're welcome. Councilor DeMambro.
Isn't there some sort of a standard, an engineering standard on a radius for an entrance and exit that they have to take, and you have to comply by the state and federal building codes or layouts of entranceways, especially in a retail environment or a commercial environment where, this automatically answers that question if you follow the protocol and the code. What would that code be?
Yeah, it's a standard DOT design, and this was approved by DOT. So I don't know what the exact radius is.
But there is a width and a radius that corresponds, that they have mapped out, that says this is a standard that will allow X amount of footage of a vehicle to safely navigate in and out.
Right, and there's a island size, and there's you have to keep the vehicle in the lane when it's it can't sweep out from the outside lane to the inner lane to make the turn. It has to stay in its lane, so the trucks are turning from the right lane into the driveway and turning out from the driveway and staying in the right lane. They have to do that.
Because they want to eliminate any rear tires or tandem tires going over any curbs or sidewalks or, God forbid, hitting a pedestrian trying to make a right-hand turn in.
Right.
So that's why if it's Mass DOT approved, I don't even know where lies the issue with Cummings. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Councilor Viola.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do agree with my fellow Councilor Mercer Bruin, that this is a much better place for Starbucks as compared to across the street. And I do have some issues with the traffic going in there as well, so with the left turn. So look forward to hearing more about this.
I'm going to make a motion that you show the plan to the fire department and ask their opinion about any changes in configuration to try to eliminate or discourage that movement, and what impact, if any, it will have on their emergency vehicles.
Second.
So your motion is to tell them to do that, or do you want me to forward on the plan?
I would like for us to send a communication.
Okay, thank you.
For them to weigh in on the plans. I assume the petitioner will work in collaboration with the chief and the fire department to get those answers.
So you want us to follow up with the chief?
We're gonna send a communication, but you know that, so you might wanna make the phone call, I guess is the simplest way to say it.
The motion on the floor is a motion to send a communication.
The chief can.
The city council is sending a communication to the Woburn Fire Department to make comments on this plan.
So motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Pass.
Okay, Mr. President, before you open the public hearing, these are the same conditions that we've submitted at the last 2 meetings. I'd like to submit them once again for the record.
Motion, we receive those and call them a working draft.
Second.
Motion and a second to accept the conditions. All in favor?
Aye.
The only difference is the date.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Gracias.
Thank you, Lindsay. Yes, Councilor Brewer.
Attorney Tarby, thank you. It is, to my recollection, the exact same list. Just something to think about before we wrap this up, hopefully very soon. In the event that the fire department concurs with what you folks have said tonight, that nothing can be done, I'd like you to think about a possible condition that gives us some protection if this thing becomes a bigger issue than what it is today, this left-hand turn. And the reason I ask that is because I know people love their coffee, so they'll do anything to get to it. Just put your thinking cap on, and I'm not going to suggest that, or maybe I will suggest that if it became a problem, that one of the conditions would be the petitioner has to hire a detail in the event that it becomes an issue, and we could determine language, what would call it an issue, crashes, significant, or an uptick in accidents in the area. I'm just sort of spitballing here, but at the end of the day, I want some protection for the city, that if this doesn't work out the way we think it's going to work out, some additional protection.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but that's going to be a hard thing to measure. Especially when you look at other drive-throughs around the city, there's nothing worse than the one that's scrubbered up.
Right.
That's that's left and a right turn every time I go over there. And I guess I'm not aware of any other curb cut like this where you would have that type of condition, but we'll put our thinking caps on.
Okay. And again, there is the signal there. I think that alone is going to make this site busier than the other one because it is safer. Put your thinking cap on. Thank you.
Anyone else from the council?
Make a motion to open the public hearing?
Second.
A motion and a second to open a public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
It passes. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to come forward and speak on this matter? How are you tonight?
Pretty good. How are you, Mr. President?
Good, thank you.
Chris Wilson, presenting on behalf of Cummings. And I just want to start by saying I'm not a traffic engineer, so I don't know the radius and the specific measurements there. I'm not paid to know that. I'm not licensed to know that. My role here and my role with Cummings is to try to figure out how to stop these left turns from happening before Press Cafe and before Starbucks shows up in this lot, driving a lot more traffic there and increasing, the potential for this dangerous maneuver. In doing so, the question was raised, hey, is there a way to make this safer? The petitioner simply said, no, there's no way to make it safer. And for me, that's not how my brain works. I want to know why. I appreciate the drawings that were presented today, and I definitely appreciate sort of the input from people who do know the radius and if fire trucks can make it in. That's all very important information. So whenever I was doing my research, I was just wanting to see if it was possible. So in the Devon's plan, said it was possible on highways for Federal Safety Highway Administration, all of which are linked in the email. So if you have problems finding them, you can click the link and they'll show up. And that indicated to me that, hey, this is possible. There's something more here. So someone who is saying no without any backup information, that just sort of gave me pause. If there's a way to make this safer, we shouldn't just stop at no. We should keep digging. We should keep researching. In our mind, when I was talking to the design team, you can look at the image on the screen there. There's significantly more access on the way in than on the way out. So again, as a layperson, that would suggest that if a truck's going in and has to go out the same way, then they can at least be the same width. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's an engineering explanation for why that's not the case, but question worth asking in my mind. And that's how we came up with the 1414 proposal. If a fire truck can leave fire truck can enter. Again, common sense, maybe there's an engineering explanation for why that's not the case. And looking at, highway lane restrictions, federal highway recommendations, it suggested that you can make that even shorter. So hey, shorter, narrower lanes, slow traffic moving in, safer traffic conditions. Again, something to consider. And these proposals here, as they're being presented to the fire department, we drew those based on what we thought was the cheapest solution, which would be to expand the center island. Of course, if we bump out the curves too, would probably be a little more expensive, but again, adds additional opportunities to make this place safer. So as we're exploring opportunities, as we're moving away from a bias towards no, I would recommend looking at opportunities to expand the curbs so that it's a wider entrance in. Additionally, I believe the council recently approved a channelized curve that included rumble strips. So even if all else fails, adding a couple extra feet that just have the rumbles, it's a different color, it's a different texture. When you're looking at that, you're seeing that physical barrier. So the 2017 thesis from the grad student may not be industry standards, but someone put a lot of thought into this, and they found that physical barriers stop people from going through. I think that makes sense, again, applying common sense. So if we can't have the highest, the most obstructive physical barrier, I think there are less intrusive ways of doing it as well that, again, go towards the purpose of just restricting the curbs there. And lastly, I just want to point out that this is the only intersection that has the restrictions. So this is the only area where we can kind of make this progress here. It's also closest to the signal and has a lot of high turnover traffic here. So as we're in this permitting process, Cummings is very much in support, for the avoidance of doubt, we're very much in support of the development here. Putting Starbucks in this location, we agree that it would be safer. It's twice as big, so as a person who likes to actually work in a Starbucks, I think that's a great addition. So we think this will be a welcomed improvement on Washington Street. But as all of these things are coming through, maybe there was only 3 car accidents before, you're adding a lot more traffic now. So you're gonna have to basically shift the traffic over there. It's closer to the intersection by about 500 feet than the current driveway. And yeah, it's the same driver demographics. And then you throw in the press cafe. We just think more conversation should be happen, more problem solving here. And that's all we were trying to do with our letter, our drawings, our additional homework. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, and we do appreciate it.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this matter? Seeing no one.
Make a motion that we continue the public hearing to the regular meeting on February 20th, and that the matter be, actually,
Are you gonna have them all in committee?
I'm sorry?
You're gonna have them all in committee on Monday?
I'm not here Monday. I would, wasn't it?
Yes.
Drop a motion.
I would suggest we just continue it to February 20th. I'm pretty confident we'll be able to work some of this stuff out
So I'll make a motion
between
that
now
we,
and then.
I'll make a motion that we continue it to the regular meeting on February 20th.
Second.
Motion and a second to continue to February 20th. All in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
On the petition by Hannaford and Dumas Corporation for a special permit pursuant to section 55.1 subsection 40AB, section 5.1 subsection 42, section 5.1 subsection 57B, section 7.3, section 8.2.5, and section 15 to allow construction of a 2-story addition, approximately 6,960 square feet of additional gross floor area with overnight parking of 1 box truck with a reduction of parking at 26 Con Street.
Attorney Tabby, you have the floor.
Good evening, Attorney Joseph Tabby, Woburn and Redmond, 500 Unicorn Park Drive in Woburn. With me this evening is Steve Breyer, who's the president of Hannaford Dumas. So I would like to point out on the site plan, we're going to be filing a revised site plan the next day or two, just to correct the parking table. The parking table indicates that the required parking is 79. It's really 70. So we'll be looking for reduction from 70 to 60. So we're looking for a modification of the special permit that was granted in 2012, recorded, but never acted upon. We're asking for a special permit under 7.3 to allow for a two-story addition to the building known as 26 Con Street that would provide for an additional 6,960 square feet of additional floor area. We're also looking for approval to allow for the overnight parking of one box truck, which is shown parked off to the right, not in one of the designated parking spaces. And since this is in the groundwater protection district, we're looking for a special permit within the groundwater protection district. Also looking for a reduction as a result of having 3 separate uses in the building: office, light manufacturing, warehouse, to reduce the parking from 70 to 60 spaces. The ordinance allows up to 1/3 reduction upon special permit. We're only looking for 10 spaces. Petitioner has 44 employees in this building, so there's plenty of parking. The building is non-conforming because the existing frontage is 0.1 foot and 20 feet is required. The existing side yard setbacks are 0.1 feet and 2.7 feet and 20 feet is required. And some of the existing parking that's been there since they've moved into the building is within the buffer zone. And then we have a loading dock, existing loading dock that fronts on Con Street. The property is located in the Industrial General Zoning District, which requires a special permit for both the manufacturing and warehouse uses. So petitioner is a independent commercial printing company that was founded in 1976 by Andrew Hannaford and Michelle Dumas. The company has grown since that time, moving to Woburn in 2001, and in 2005 expanded its operations to a 30,000 square foot building. So it's been a long time Woburn business. At its headquarters in Woburn and facilities in New Hampshire and Maine, it provides a wide range of printing capabilities, web-based marketing solutions, direct mail services for a mixed group of industries, including education, healthcare, retail, food service, high-tech, financial advertising, fashion, travel, publishing, and nonprofits, along with other uses. Its clients include the New England Patriots, Leahy Health, New Balance, and Sylvania. This has been a family-owned operation, operating on Con Street all this time without any major issues. So going back to 2012, the council unanimously approved the construction of 2 additions that would have provided for an additional 14,388 square feet. This proposal is to construct a 2-story addition providing for an additional 6,960 square feet, which so it was less than the original one that was requested in 2012. And again, we've requested the reduction in the parking. As I indicated at the beginning, we are going to be filing a revised site plan. We extended an invitation to Councilor Papalato to come down to the site for a tour of the building and an up-close presentation of what we plan to do there. The company has been operating at Con Street forever, and I'm not aware of any the major issues that have occurred at that location. So I assume this is going to committee. We'll have a revised site plan. We'll have the engineer at the next meeting. Unfortunately, he had a conflict tonight and couldn't be here. And we'll get into more detail with the site plan at the committee meeting.
Questions? Yes, Councilor Paparad.
Thank you for inviting me to that tour. I look forward to that. Have the neighbors been informed of this? Have they weighed in at all, or what's their position?
I'm sorry, Bill?
Have the neighbors been notified of the request?
Yeah, all the abutters within 300 feet have been notified,
Okay. There's no major objections at this point?
not that we're aware of.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else from the council for questions?
Make a motion to open the public hearing?
Second.
The motion and the second to open the public hearing, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to say anything on this particular special permit? Please come forward.
Make a motion that we continue the public hearing to February 20th and that we send it off to the Committee on Special Permits.
Second.
The second in the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Next item on the agenda is on a committee reports is from Finance, an order authorizing the mayor to apply for a grant or loan assistance for the purpose of conducting a water line inventory. A committee report was received, ought to pass.
Make a motion the committee report be adopted?
Second.
The motion and the second that this is adopted, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That passes.
Next item on the agenda is a communication dated January 26, 2024, was received from David DeBari, the Superintendent Director of Northeast Metropolitan Regional Vocational School.
Make a motion that the matter be received and placed on file?
There's a motion and a second to place it on file, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes.
Next item on the agenda is a communication dated January 3rd, 2024, was received from Shauna Healy, the Human Resource Director, as follows, regarding the Deputy Superintendent of DPW.
Make a motion the matter is received and placed on file?
Second.
Second.
The motion and the second to place on file, all in favor?
Aye.
Mr.
Pass.
President, I'd like to make a motion that we take the next 12 matters collectively, receive the communications and make them part of the permanent record and refer them off to the Committee on Personnel.
Second.
The motion and the second to take the next 12 collectively, all in favor?
Aye.
Those are matters on appointments and reappointments.
Thank you. That passes.
And one moment, please.
Sure.
Next item on the agenda is the order calling the presidential primary election on March 5th, 2024.
Make a motion that the order be adopted? Second.
Motion and a second for the order to be adopted, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Next item on the agenda is the order, that the committee and personnel take the necessary steps to fill the vacancy in the position of Deputy Superintendent of Public Works.
Mr. President, pursuant to Rule 34, I'll make a motion that we refer that to the Committee on Ordinance, Charter, and Rules.
There is a motion and a second, all in favor?
Hang on a second.
Yes.
It usually goes to personnel.
It's actually, the process, it's supposed to go to ordinance first, for ordinance to look over the, pursuant to the Rule 34, it's supposed to go to ordinance first to look over the job requirements and the salary, and then a report's supposed to come out from the Committee on Ordinance to the full City Council, and this full City Council is supposed to authorize. It's in Rule 34.
Okay, and that is for not the candidates themselves?
No.
That's
No,
ju-
no, no,
The
and then
description
they
and
start
the
the
salary.
process, and then when it comes time to application and reviewing applications, then it goes to personnel.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the explanation there.
Did we second?
So there's a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next item on the agenda is a communication dated January 3rd, 2024, was received from Alan Callahan Doucette regarding the order to repeal moving zoning ordinance section 10 cluster developments with a corresponding order.
I'll make a motion that the communication be received, made part of the permanent record. Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Make a
Pass.
motion that the matter be referred to a public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second that it's put to a public hearing, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second
And
to it.
it's also supposed to be referred to the planning board. Thank you.
So,
Can you make a
I'll
motion?
make a subsequent motion to refer that off to the planning board.
Second.
motion and a second to put it to the planning board. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion-
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn.